Hello everyone. In this session, we will see few more AWS services. Some are really very important services that we have missed in our earlier session. So in our earlier session about AWS services, I have provided details the services actually that is offered from AWS for networking, some of the security services. We will look actually the security in more great detail, some monitoring and logging, databases. We have seen some compute, backup service, some automation services, and few more other services for dynamically retrieving the variables, strings, or passwords. And we have seen infrastructure as code, one of the service that is provided from AWS. Today, in this session, I would like to provide a few other services I think really very important to know before you start your work at any organization, or if you're already working, then you have to take out some of your time and go through these services, because if you are not working on that in any of your project at this time, it might definitely will come up in other different more projects. So let me start with the load balancers. Although I have provided some details about load balancer in a few other sessions where a load balancer will be load balancing the EC2 instances. The idea is the same. What a load balancer is doing is, it's how its name suggests, it's load balancing. So whenever a request comes to the endpoint of a load balancer, that request will be routed to the instances or the targets that are attached to the load balancer. To be more simpler, a load balancer is receiving requests, it load balances and distributes the request to different instances or IP addresses that is its load balancer targets. And why we need a load balancer? Why we need a load balancer? Although in my few other sessions in coming videos, I have really thought of providing more in-depth about everything about the load balancer, pretty much all of the services. But today we'll quickly see what the load balancer will is for. So there are, if the request is coming just to one instance, for example, one operating system is there, one web server is there, and all the requests is coming to that web server. In that situation, we might not need a load balancer. Okay? And when for bigger applications, when there are millions of requests coming, thousands, hundreds of thousands of requests coming, and if one target is not enough to handle those requests, then what load balancer does is, if one instance is not enough, then you can have multiple instances or targets receiving those requests. Okay, and if and then a load balancer will route the traffic request to all of its targets. That is something about the load balancer. So from AWS, very earlier offering, when I have seen it was just one load balancer that was classic load balancer, that it handles all the TCP based request, HTTP based request, and later what AWS has done is it has provided two different load balancers. One is network load balancer that routes the TCP traffic, and the other is the application load balancer. So the idea is same for both, but some of the protocols and some of the features is different. But the main idea of load balancing is there for both network load balancer, that is AWS NLB, and the application load balancer AWS ALB. Okay, saying that, so there is one another use case that I can see for using a load balancer. When this is one use case, millions of requests, thousands, hundreds of thousands, and the multiple targets are there to handle the request. There is one other situation when the application needs itself is to be highly available. In that case, we need two instances, two targets. What high availability we are achieving here is if one of the target is destroyed, or destroyed in the sense it's just not reachable, or something happened, and then it's not receiving requests, processing requests, or the health check of that instance is not good. In that situation, the application won't fail, and the request still can be routed to the other instance that is available. So this is one another use case for high availability. Before the targets, you place a load balancer that receives the request and routes the request, and based on the health checks, if it is healthy, it will send. So later in our videos sessions, we will look more about the target groups, what kind of targets will that be, in more and more detail, what kind of a target, what kind of a traffic it is receiving, the loading of the certificates on the load balancer, termination of the SSL traffic. That is something a load balancer application load balancer does, and then target that is it's added to the target groups. That is something we will see. There are like a whole of it, few features, the protocols and the support, the traffic flow, and the access logs, and everything about the load balancer later in our videos. But I think that is something very important you to remember. There is network load balancer and the application load balancer. The classic load balancer is not being used anymore. Nobody is using that for their application needs, and I think that might even have deprecated for use. So that is load balancing. Now, one another important service is auto scaling. That is, auto scaling is, now we are load balancing the targets. Okay. Now could be a situation when you have like a certain amount, maybe during like a 24 hours of a day, when you're looking at if the organization sees or the customer needs are, the application is running from 9 to 5, and only in that time the application is busy and the server is busy processing the request, and the amount of compute, the memory, and then all that is needed is for that period of time. In that situation, what, and then like in such situation, so if you have, for example, hundreds and thousands of requests coming during that time, or one another situation could be some product is launched, and so a lot of customers reaching out to like a lot of customers are trying to look out and find more details about the product or purchase the product, things like that. And so in that situation also, a huge amount of traffic will increase. There are many situations, if there is an event, if some big event going on, whatever it's the need. But the idea is, when there are a lot of requests, a specific amount of time, and then you need higher amount of CPU, so then you need multiple different instances for its compute, and then processing of that request. And then after that time, you do not need those many servers running, and then it will cost the organization. So autoscaling is a service. What it does, it based on a metric, it sees if one of the instance CPU, for example, I'm saying a CPU metric is maybe, for example, 70% or 75%. It depends whatever we set. Once it breaches the threshold, alarm triggered, and then based on that metric, breaching the threshold, auto-scaling, what it does is it will add more instances, one more instance, depending on all settings, how we provide, and then instructs the auto-scalings to do. So for that, we create a launch template based on all the details, everything, and then auto-scaling group. So we will look at that also in our future videos more. So load balancing and auto-scaling can be integrated. So to auto-scaling, a load balancer can be attached. So what it will work? Whatever the auto-scaling is adding the instances, adding the IP, like adding more and more of its targets, auto-scaling like adding more of the instances. So in turn, the load balancer will load balance those targets. So it will be the more idea. This is something, the integration and then a complete flow. This is very important to see and to understand, and how the requests flows, and the different EZs, availability zones that the instances will be in there, and how the load balancer nodes that it is added into the different AZs into the subnets that has to be added for the load balancer to route traffic and scale into that subnet or AZ. That is something there for load balancer, auto scaling, and the targets. I will definitely, it's very like interesting, and I will go provide all these details in one of the other video, complete flow of the application, how the request is coming, the DNS, and then to the load balancers, the termination of the SSL, if it is HTTPS traffic or SSL traffic, then termination of the certificate, deploying of the certificate on the load balancer, and then adding the targets. A network load balancer can have a target to the application load balancer, and in turn there is the application load balancer can have its own targets as the different instances, and a web application deployed on to the servers, and then it is sending the request, and then we can see, and then there is one in future video when I will think that other than this just explanation and theoretical explanation is, I think when I think that it is enough, then after that I will start all the demos. That is one thing. And yeah, so I don't go too much because deep more into the load balancer auto scaling now, because we will have like some dedicated videos on that. So moving forward, I also just mentioned AWS Certificate Manager, ACM. So this is the AWS. It provides us the feature for the certificates, and you could use the AWS provided certificate, or you can import a certificate created outside of AWS and import into the AWS Certificate Manager. Once you import, then that the reference to it, the link, can be added to the load balancer. So this is an integration from the different services. Once you add that, the certificate ARN, then this whatever the certificate is there, you have imported from your other authority, other certificate authority. If you have imported the certificate, that is that or like AWS generated certificate, that can be used for the SSL termination at the application load balancer. That's one of the use case. There are multiple use cases, and that is for sure, if it is a good idea for you to learn, understand about certificates and how it terminates and integrates with the services. That is one another thing. One more, moving forward, I think should move forward, and let's look into few other services. And so we have seen load balancer, auto scaling, AWS certificate manager. That is something we have seen. Okay, let me also tell you something about service catalog. It will be important for you to understand what service catalog is, because the organizations are using that. And I will give a use case when you have some resources to be provisioned in the AWS. some sort of infrastructure, some sort of a key, something as what is that whatsoever, some infrastructure to be provided in to be provisioned actually in the AWS. So the infrastructure as code, the cloud formation can be used to provision the infrastructure. But if that is a very common use case, multiple projects being used the same set of the template, and they just need with the same configuration, maybe some different names as per their projects, they are looking to have some resources provisioned. And they do not like that. Actually, like what happens is with service catalog, what it happens, it can be set up in a way to provision the resources. You just, the developers or whoever is in need, they just go and use the product, and the portfolios will be created to just provide some of their project details, and the resources will be provisioned. In the backend, already some from like the organization, one or the other team, they might have set up the CloudFormation template at the backend for it, and provided you just as a console in service catalog with some of your project needs, that the project name, details or whatsoever to be added, and then once you use that, your infrastructure, services, whatever is that is configured for, will be provisioned. So that is something there, and it is a good idea for you to look into that as well. And I think that is really something, some of the really very important services that I thought should also be included. And in my security, like in my other video there on the security session, there are like a bunch of other things. I think I should tell that later, in like for example the config, AWS config, more about an AWS inspector, and the AWS WAF, web access firewall, and some of the more details about all the whole system of securing the infrastructure and applications and the services that it provides. So I'll cover in those sections, along with the services, AWS services, and with other different areas, what it is providing. So that is something will be discussed later. So I think it's these are some of the things that is really you have to be looking at these services. A few other, maybe if there is something that I feel that it should be there, like for you to really understand, I'll add. But if you follow through my videos, go through my videos, you'll get a general idea about how the application is all set up, and how it is that the everything, all the different services integrated as a whole, as a system as a whole, and then a pipeline is actually created to deploy the infrastructure. So this is something, the idea actually I want to bring you to. This is something is my goal for you to understand how all these services, integration of these services, a complete deployment of an application, and the application, and how it is a CI/CD pipeline. With that CI/CD pipeline, you're deploying those applications and the infrastructure, provisioning that infrastructure, and once you provision, all that is integrated, authentication and authorization is being done, and then you have the access to the application and all the integrated services providing some of like the application needs that it is set up for. So that will be my really my end goal, and somebody understanding, if this somebody can understand this application as on EC2, similar applications on API Gateway and Lambda, similar applications, similar in the sense like some application on the microservices, ECS and ECR, and some of the applications on the databases, and then all of these, and then some of the connectivity from the hybrid connectivity from the on-prem to the cloud. This, if somebody is understanding this, as and they're getting a general idea of how things are working, how the code is, where like all each script the code is going, how it is deployed, and where like the monitoring is happening, like what dashboards you need to see for monitoring, how the troubleshooting can be done in say such situation when things are not like erroring out. So infrastructure based while provisioning that infrastructure, the errors, troubleshooting, all these one by one, like one by one, and then at the end, very end, we will like later, I'll try to have some demo, a whole demo of multiple applications, multiple things deployed using some of the pipeline, different pipelines actually. So in once you are comfortable with that, it is, you'll be at a very good position, a very good position at the organization. I think the thing that I have seen, a lot of people, they do not know, and then I will also, it will be my goal to provide you what are some of the soft skills that is, and because it is really, I was I had a really very hard time for some of the things that I will really provide, and for some like people to be much easier, and for example like the soft skills and the interaction, communication, and then the deadlines, the management, how much work that you can take, how much, what is that efforts that it is really needed, and what kind of the discussions, and then people try to push on to the work. That is something. So these are some of the soft skills. This is really very important for you and whoever is to understand, and then work accordingly, not just the technical. So there is no one is something it's caring for you. It's really something the technical. You, if you think that you're providing technical solutions, and it is not something, it's really that is the end of the work. It is something more, is almost 70% is also your soft skills, especially in the bigger organization when they really have like a lot of huge amount of money, and then available for their projects. And in that situation, just knowing technically is not really will be very helpful for you, but that is for sure. You have to go through all these services and what I have discussed, and make sure you're going through all the services and the session 1 that I have provided, and then this will be about the continuation of that, the session 2 for the AWS services, and I'm sure I will discuss more other services in details, and all the integrations. So that is about it, and thank you so much.